Welcome, ladies and gents. Chris Andre here. You can find me at BetBoxing on Twitter for boxing-related tweets. It's the big one, isn't it? Tyson Fury has traveled to California to fight Deontay Wilder in an attempt to dethrone him and take his WBC title. Wilder, of course, has other ideas. Can't wait. Haven't been able to sleep because I'm so excited about this fight. Let's talk about how this fight's going to go. Long-time subscribers, disclaimer, okay? Long-time subscribers will know I'm a huge fan of Tyson Fury from as far back as 2010, 11, and 12, those sorts of eras then. I used to talk about Fury as being the guy who's going to dethrone Vladimir Klitschko. This is when David Price was the one who was considered the future star of the heavyweight division, when people used to mock Tyson Fury for uppercutting himself in the face and things like that, saying he was a bum and stuff like that. And I always used to say, nope, this guy's got the tools. He needs to be sharpened on a couple of things tactically and technically, but if he does, he's going to be the dude that's going to do it. And you know, obviously I felt vindicated, so ever since then I've always rooted for him, to initially really for vindication, but then the more I got to see him, the more I got to like his character, and I always felt that he was a misunderstood guy, so I started to like Tyson Fury. So I'm a Tyson Fury fan, okay? Disclaimer for guys that aren't long-term subscribers to the channel. However, I'm going to try and give an honest analysis and an honest opinion like I always do on this channel. And we're going to give a technical breakdown, a tactical breakdown, and give a prediction as to how I believe the fight's going to go. Now, if this fight had happened a few years ago when they were both at their peak, I believe Tyson Fury would have 80% chance of winning this fight. We're going to talk about why, from a technical perspective, the errors that Wilder does, the strengths that he's got, and vice versa. And we're going to talk about styles and how the other one can expose the other one. So I would have given Fury 80% chance. As things are now, I'm probably giving Wilder 70 to 80% chance, okay? So my opinion on this is affected by the amount of time Fury's been out, what he's done to his body in the meantime, abused it with cocaine and alcohol, and he's put on all that weight. He's basically lost an entire welterweight from what we hear, or close to a welterweight now, in weight, okay? So imagine he got to a point where he was carrying a welterweight. Now, he wasn't out of action and staying fit like, I don't know, Vitaly Klitschko was doing, rehabilitating his body when he retired and came back. He wasn't doing what George Foreman was doing. Although he got a lot older, he was, living a healthy lifestyle. It wasn't doing any of that. Tyson Fury destroyed his body in many regards. So we're going to talk about why I think that will affect him. Okay, we'll talk about the areas that could affect his body and why I believe that it will affect him and cost him the fight. We'll start off talking about the strengths of Deontay Wilder. Now, first and foremost, one sec, I'm just going to pause this because I'm about to sneeze. Sorry about that. So, first and foremost, Deontay Wilder's got a reputation for being this terrible technical fighter, and all he does is windmill and things like that. Let's set the record straight. Firstly, let me say this. There's a difference between science and art. The science of boxing and the art of boxing. A science is something with a set of rules, defined laws, okay? Something that's testable. If I pick up this mouse and I let go of this mouse, my life's experiences have told me that this mouse is going to fall. Now, there's a theory of gravity. It's not quite a law, but there's a theory of gravity. Now, what causes it, whether it's gravity or buoyancy or whatever else you want to argue, is a completely different discussion. The mechanisms of why it falls, it doesn't, it's irrelevant to this discussion. The fact is, history has told me from testing it, because we are scientists every day of our lives with our experiences, that if I let go of the mouse, it's going to fall. So what a scientist will do when it comes to the fight game, he will look at certain things again and again and again. He'll analyze them and he'll say, right, if you do this, or more often than not, it will lead to that. This action causes this reaction. So if you throw a windmilling punch, they tell you it's the wrong thing to do. It's incorrect because their scientific analysis has told them that it takes longer to get from A to B if you're going around a corner than it does if you're throwing a straight shot. So if you throw at the same time as someone who's throwing a straight punch and you're throwing a looping wide, crazy shot, you're going to miss the target, or at least you're going to be hit first. So you might get knocked out before your shot even lands. So somebody who's a boxing purist, someone who believes in the science of a martial art, but a martial science, okay, for this topic, for this debate, that's what we'll call it, will tell you that he makes errors. An artist, though, is about trying new things and their own interpretation of things. So if you get someone who's a painter, they might be doing some crazy things, and at the end of it, you'll look at it and he might have drawn something that you think a 4-year-old could do that, or you might say, wow, that's a masterpiece. That's the difference between a scientist and an artist. Science believes in testable rules, and an artist believes in creativity, essentially. Now, you get a lot of guys that do both. In other words, they will master the fundamentals, the science, and then they will try to add their own interpretation. Think of guys like Rigondeaux, all that movement and stuff, but he's quite scientific in the way he executes things. You could say the same about Lomachenko. Okay, but then you get other guys who do things that you would say are technically wrong, so to speak, and they're still world class. Guys like Roy Jones Jr. Okay, so there's no right or wrong when it comes to these things. Sometimes it's about your philosophy when it comes to these sorts of things. Now, both of these guys tend to lean more towards the artistry than the science. Okay, both of them do things that purists would consider to be technically incorrect. And in my opinion, this is why Tyson Fury has been so underrated and continues to be underrated. I think a lot of people don't understand what it is that he does. And so they look at it and they say, okay, he's doing something wrong. He's throwing a left hook while, from a low angle, his arms at a low angle, and he's pivoting in the wrong direction when he's doing it. And people are sitting there thinking, well, how could he possibly do that and get away with it? But he reads his opponent's positioning. Okay, he adds his own artistry to it. Now, with Deontay Wilder, he makes a lot of what you would call errors, but there's thought process behind it a lot of the time. Sometimes they're errors that can be exposed. So let's pretend that they were both at their best. One of the things that Wilder does, he doesn't just go in there and start windmilling, okay? He likes to work off the jab. Now, he's not got a Larry Holmes jab or a Klitschko jab, but it's a long-rangey jab. It's underrated. It's a good jab. But he uses it, sometimes he'll just use it to step into a shot and he's landing that shot. Against a higher level of opponent, or even regardless actually of the level of opponent, he's also using it sometimes as a range finder. And what he wants to do is he wants to make sure that his right hand is in range. So if he cannot find the jab, if he cannot find a home for it, he starts to become frustrated. We saw that against Luis Ortiz, and we saw that against Artur Szpilka. Luis Ortiz, obviously, a southpaw, was moving to his own right and constantly getting Wilder to try and turn. Whereas Szpilka was coming in low and almost like a Mike Tyson-esque movement at times. He was trying to bypass that jab and taking it away from Wilder, and it was causing Wilder a lot of frustration. Because one of the things that Wilder's got, he's got quite a wide stance a lot of the time. And by having that wide stance, see, someone like Billy Joe Saunders' stance is quite narrow. So when he'll jab, he'll step out with his lead foot and his jab, land the jab, and then come back. He's still got enough. He's still got enough shift in his balance to be able to come back. He hasn't overreached or overstretched to come back into his position where he can then take another step back and maintain range if he has to. So he can constantly move, but he'll step in with that jab and step back out. If you've already got a wide stance, you can't really do that because it's almost like you're doing the splits. You step in with that jab and now you've overreached. It's a lot harder. Now your weight is on your front foot rather than your back foot. So now you've got to shift your weight back onto your back foot before you can come out. Now you're talking about a sport that, you're talking about milliseconds to avoid a punch. So what Wilder will tend to do is, if he's stepping into a shot, he can overreach. Now the problem with that's why he needs that left hand as a rangefinder. The problem with that is that because Wilder, one of the reasons he punches so hard, speed, so velocity and mass is what causes the power. He's throwing it very, very fast, and he's throwing that right hand and he's twisting into it, and he usually throws it very, very straight. He twists his entire body into it, almost like a baseball pitcher throws a ball, and his reverse leg, his back leg, comes forward, and he becomes quite square on because he's launching everything into that punch. Okay, one of the reasons that a lot of people say, oh, punchers don't have chins, is because they do the same thing. It's not that they don't have a chin. There's nothing on your body that's born biologically that says, okay, if you can produce power, you don't have a chin. Okay, nothing to do with that. What it is because they're throwing everything at it. They're launching themselves so they can walk onto a shot. Okay, they're not careful. They don't have their weight on their back foot. So they're throwing caution to the wind. Now, when Deontay Wilder's throwing that first phase attack, he's very, very dangerous. This is key, okay? His first jab, he needs that rangefinder, and he'll throw that right hand. If he misses that right hand, because his back foot has come forward, he's now square on. He's out of position. and he panics. And what he does in that situation is to start throwing wildly. So now he's square on. What's he going to do? He's not going to cover up and try and step back out. He'll start throwing his right hand wildly. He's trying to cause mayhem and havoc. And because he hits so hard and everything's crazy around the opponent, it's almost like a tornado with debris flying around, the opponent is worried about setting his feet and staying in the pocket. Because if he catches you, even with a lucky shot, you're in serious trouble. He's possibly the biggest puncher I've ever seen. Okay? So fighters are afraid of that. So he starts to panic. The problem is he's also open to being hit in that position. The other thing he does, like I said, his feet can be too wide. When he's trying to twist and turn and step around an opponent, he can cross his legs. So if he wants to step to his left, bear in mind he's an orthodox fighter, if he wants to step to his left, his right leg will go too far around the left. And sometimes you'll see him, it looks like he's going to trip over his feet. Okay? His ankles look like they're going to fold over. There's a difference between foot speed and footwork. He's got fast feet, but his footwork isn't technically great. So a prime Tyson Fury, in my opinion, the reason he beats him the majority of the times, firstly, let's say they're on the inside. Wilder's got an underrated uppercut. As you're stepping inside, he's got an underrated uppercut. People don't give him credit for it. But generally speaking, he doesn't like to fight on the inside. He needs that range to work. He's quite slim and slender, so he doesn't want a much bigger, heavier guy pushing him around. So he wants that ability to be quick, to be able to be on the outside and be able to find that range with the jab and throw that right hand and land that right hand before the bigger, slower opponent can react. Now, if you're moving him around and leaning on him and getting up close, something Duopa did, high guard, stepping forward, walking him down, you can get close to Wilder and cause him problems. Now, if you're just walking forward, you're going to be eating a lot of punishment. This is why I don't believe that Jarrell Miller would beat Deontay Wilder. But Tyson Fury potentially could get up close, work that body, and start to pivot around him. We've seen him do it against guys like Chisora, do it against guys like Christian Hammer, where he just drops his... We saw him do it when he was up on the turnbuckle against Pianetta, and he was doing that little Ali thing, where he's just got his hands on the ropes and he's just moving out of the way. He drops his head, he steps out, drops his head, and pivots away. Something that you expect to see from a light heavyweight or a super middleweight, not from a heavyweight. And if you can keep Wilder turning, Wilder's not going to be able to set his feet. And Wilder's going to be in that position where he's turning his feet across, and if his feet across and he's off balance, and Fury's the heavier guy and he's pushing him and hitting him while he's doing that, and he's been rough and tumble on the inside, and there's a strong referee that will let them fight on the inside, not like the Italian ref that was in charge when Joshua fought Parker, but a ref that will let them work on the inside, then Wilder could be in serious trouble. On the inside, on the outside, Tyson Fury is capable of boxing orthodox and southpaw. Now, let's start off with orthodox. One thing about his orthodox stance, he'll step and feint, and you don't know when a punch is coming. He'll double feint. He'll flick the jab out. It's a very, very good jab. It keeps you off balance. It can hurt you. It's got good pop behind it. And he'll almost always be on the back foot often. Weight shifted to the back foot. And because he's got that height and reach advantage, what happens is he's teasing you and he's landing his jab. You're eventually trying to throw that punch. Now, as you try and throw that punch, he will often have that right hand cocked. He'll land that right hand, might be a little uppercut or shovel hook or just a flat out hook, and fall back onto the ropes to create further distance. So not only is he already leaning back, as you come in, he'll throw that punch and lean back further onto the ropes to create that extra distance. Then from the ropes, he can come forward and smother you, or he can pivot out, get out, and continue to go to work on you. Now, for a guy like Wilder, whose stance is wide, being able to close that range quickly would be a major problem for Deontay Wilder, particularly if Tyson at any point switches southpaw, because then the distance between the target and the right hand becomes even wider. Now, if Fury has to move forward, because we've seen Wilder get on the back foot against someone like Bermane Stiverne, if Fury has to chase Wilder down, he could potentially, because like I said, Fury's often reacting at that moment. He's not thinking scientifically. He's not going to be thinking, I need my lead foot on the outside of Wilder's lead foot, because that will put my left hand, if he's southpaw, my left hand in line with Wilder's head. He's not going to necessarily be thinking things like that. He's off the cuff. If he makes one error and comes in line with that right hand and he's moved forward too quickly, and in a straight line, and Wilder's been on the back foot and he launches that strut straight down the middle and he lands, Fury's out cold. He's walked onto a Deontay Wilder straight right hand. So don't get me wrong, Wilder's such a dangerous man. He'd have a puncher's chance against anyone in history. But by and large, Fury would be able to open that range when he wanted to from the right hand, close that range when he wanted to. He'd be able to keep Wilder turning and stopping him setting those feet. And if that distance to the target is wider because he's moved to southpaw and he's stepping on the back foot and moving away, Wilder's going to have to even more ground to cover with his wide stance. Having to then close that distance is going to be hard for him. He's going to end up overreaching. And like I said, when he overreaches, that second phase attack is when he's off balance. And then he's going to start windmilling. And that's when he's going to start to get countered and caught and pushed back and taken into areas he doesn't want to be in. But here's the deal. Tyson Fury's awkwardness in this particular situation, because he's moving in ways that are just, they're not planned. It's a natural thing. He can also potentially move into a wild shot. Fury's moving wildly. Wilder's swinging wildly. There's nothing to say that they won't cross paths and just something will land and change the course of the fight. But additionally to that, Fury's been affected in two ways, massively, in my opinion. In the last 3 years that he's been out, and he's abused his body with alcohol, with cocaine, and so on and so forth, and he's put on all that weight. He's lost the whole, from what we've understood, the whole Ricky Hatton of weight, it was said today by Steve Bunce, I believe. So he's lost an entire welterweight of weight. Okay, it's a lot of weight to lose. Now, your body goes through the grinder when you're doing things like that. Now, the two areas that he's been affected, number one is reflexes and speed, that ability to step back, at least from what we've seen so far since he's come back. If he cannot maintain that range when Wilder's trying to jump in, if he can't keep that range back, step back, counter and maintain range, he's in serious trouble. When Paulie Malignaggi fought Amir Khan, there's little doubt in my mind that Paulie knows more about the sport from a technical and tactical perspective than Amir Khan. There's little doubt in my mind. But what is Paulie all about? Paulie was a terrific fighter, one of my favorite ever fighters, because he was fast, but he wasn't Amir Khan fast. And he wasn't a puncher, and yet he was a two-weight world champ. And to me, as someone who likes to analyze, that's beautiful. If you're just a puncher and you've just got a punch on you, you're born with it. You're not going to teach anyone how to box. There's no science or artistry there for a lot of these punchers. It's just a natural thing. He steps in, he lets his hand go, he hits people, they fall over. They never really learn the sport in some regards, and that's why a lot of these punchers, when they come up against elite level boxers, they are made to look stupid. Whereas Paulie understood the fight game, and I loved that. But Paulie was a fast fighter. Not Amir Khan fast, but he was fast. And he was all about technique and being able to dictate and dominate a guy with the jab and that distance control. So distance control, technique, obviously distance control and the jab are linked, and speed. Well, Amir Khan was longer, taller, faster, and threw more punches, a lot more volume. So stylistically speaking, everything that Malignaggi did, his strengths were nullified by the fact that Khan's strengths were greater. If you're a really strong guy, and you're going to have an arm wrestle against a guy who's even stronger, you're going to lose. So if Tyson Fury's not as fast as he normally is, if his reflexes aren't what they were, then this becomes a major, major problem when he's trying to avoid these massive power punches against a fast fighter by an inch or two. Because you don't want to go too far back, because then you're not throwing anything back. You've got to just make a guy miss so that when he's off balance, you're on balance, and then you counter him. You're talking about inches and millimeters. That's one area. The other area he's been affected is stamina. So even if he's doing all this and he's looking sensational for the first 6, 7, 8 rounds, how's he going to cope in the championship rounds if he hasn't gotten Wilder out of there? Potentially be in serious trouble again. The third area where he's been affected, where nobody talks about, is punching power. A lot of people say, yeah, power's the last thing to go. It is. Now, a lot of people are saying, well, he carried Pianetta. He asked the corner, shall I stop him? And the corner said no. I heard Fury say, shall I go for it? I don't know what Ben Davison said. I didn't hear. I couldn't hear. I've tried to listen to it again and again. Maybe Ben Davison said, yeah, get him out of there. We don't know. They're since telling us that he said no. But if Tyson Fury wanted to get him out of there in round 12, I don't think Ben Davison's going to say, no, you didn't get the rounds in. Well, I finished him a minute before the end. He never looked like getting him out of there. Now, he wasn't a monstrous puncher, but go and look at Christian Hammer. Christian Hammer's a good fighter. He stopped David Price. He beat Erkan Tepa. He's a good fighter. He's a good upper European level fighter, Christian Hammer. And the punching power was there. You could see the head snapping. He stopped him. Derek Chisora, he wasn't dropped in the way that Hay dropped him, knocked him out. But his face was busted up and he was getting hurt consistently and he ended up getting pulled out. And Fury at no point put his foot on the gas. At no point did he put his foot on the front, put his weight on his front foot to look to try and knock him out. He wasn't trying. The power was carrying. Against Seferi seemed to quit. He didn't seem to get knocked out or beaten up. He seemed to quit. Pianetta made the distance. The punch and power doesn't seem to have the snap behind it. Is he going to be able to counter Wilder and knock him out, hurt him at least? I don't know. What happens if he's not? And he doesn't have the speed and reflexes to keep him off. Then he's in serious trouble. So from a technical perspective, Tyson Fury is a superior fighter. But the physical draining that's occurred to Tyson Fury, I struggle to see how he's going to be able to cope. Now, if you're asking me how do I think this fight's going to go, let's for a minute say that Fury is 100%. It's the Fury that beat Chisora, that beat Hammer, that beat Klitschko. That's the Fury we're going to see. Then Fury can win the fight on points or he can win the fight late. Don't be surprised. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's Fury points or Wilder knockout. Don't be surprised if Fury's beating him up and he's been leaning on him and tiring him out. He's not a big guy, Deontay Wilder. He's not a heavy guy. If he leans on him, wears him out, if he starts to rip that body, Fury can fight on the inside. Who's to know what would happen late on in the fight? Alternatively, Wilder would always have a puncher's chance. However, because I think that Fury's not the fighter he was, certainly not for now. Maybe he just needed longer. Ben Davison himself has said, I think Tyson, ideally needed some more fights. I didn't want this fight yet. He said that. Now, since he's backtracked and said it doesn't mean he's not good enough to win. I still think he's good enough to win now, but ideally, in an ideal world, I would have wanted more fights. I don't know how you want to take that. But for me, that seems to me like they're not ready. If Fury's not 100%, don't be surprised if this goes early. Wilder might want to jump on him before Fury can take him into the trenches. And if he does and Fury's not quite as sharp and he gets caught with something, this could end early. Now, Fury has looked quite sharp even since he's come back in the first 2-3 rounds. It was later on that he didn't. So I think that the first few rounds, Tyson Fury's going to look quite good. But so did Gerald Washington against Deontay Wilder early in the fight. A lot will depend on how he affects Wilder when he's on top. If he starts to hurt Wilder and wear him down and he's got him, so to speak, then who knows? Now, one thing about Fury, he's got that ability to adapt. If he goes down, he's got a very fast rate of recovery from what we've seen in the past, and he can adapt. Against Cunningham, he had his hands up and he walked him down, turned it into an inside grueling fight, ripping the body, hitting the arms, pushing him around, making it grueling, wearing him down. Nazim Richardson has said that Cunningham's one of the fittest fighters he's ever trained. No, the fittest, in fact, is what he said. And the fittest fighter he's ever trained got drained by Fury. And it was a monstrous body shot that came in the solar plexus just before the stoppage came. Fury, if he can get on the inside, even if plan A doesn't work, he's got a chance. The thing is, are you getting up if you get dropped like he did against Cunningham? You might not get a second chance against Deontay Wilder. So if I had to bet according to logic, I would say Deontay Wilder's going to land sooner or later. I don't believe that Fury's going to be able to keep him off. From what I've seen, for 12 rounds, from what I've seen, the punching power's diminished, the stamina's diminished, and the reflexes have diminished. He has lost more weight since then. The sparring has been of a much higher level. And he's gone to Big Bear. There are some things I'm still worried about. To me, bringing in Freddie Roach 2 weeks before the fight, even as a cut man, seems like a panic move. They're going to have Ricky Hatton, Ben Davison, and Freddie Roach in the corner. Too many cooks spoil the broth. They're going to start giving contrast and advice at some point, potentially. What's going to happen then? To me, that sounds like a panic move. But let's say, for argument's sake, Fury's what he was, then I believe he's going to win the fight. I can't imagine him being the way he was. Let me know what you think, guys. I'm firmly rooting for Tyson Fury. I'm not going to hide it. I'm a big Fury fan. If Fury does this, it is incredible. He becomes an instant Hall of Famer. He would have dethroned Vladimir Klitschko, come back after a ridiculous layoff where he's destroyed his body and beaten the WBC champ. I'm really hoping he does it. I don't think he will. And like I said, I'm a huge Fury fan. Let me know what you guys think. Please subscribe to the channel. Chat to you soon. God bless.